going to shift focuses and look at diversity, inclusion, but more specifically, how leaders are responding to this moment. So leadership itself is obviously a really critical component of creating change and real impact within an organization. And we have three speakers joining us today to discuss how to be an equitable manager. And so just for the sake of saving time, I'm going to dive right in and introduce our three speakers. So as they're being added to the session, we have Marc Lafleur, the CEO of truLOCAL, Djoume Salvetti, the Director of Engineering at Shopify, and Janey I'm going to let you say your last name because I'm not even going to come close, Chief of Staff at BPTN. So I'll start with you, Janey. Why don't you just do a quick intro, let us know who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm obviously glad to be here. It's a great Monday night. My name is Janey Buzugbe. I'm Chief of Staff over at BPTN. BPTN is the largest network of Black tech professionals in Canada, as well as in the eastern part of the United States. We're about 10,000 plus professionals in our network. So obviously there's diversity in tech. We're looking to increase representation in tech, getting more Black folks into tech, but also folks who are currently in tech and are Black getting more promotions and retention within the industry. I'm going to talk a little bit more about BPTN. We also have a global summit called Be Future, which is the largest virtual gathering of Black professionals globally. I'm also a newcomer coach. I have a business called Janey of Canada, where I help newcomers with resources to settle easily in Canada. On the side, I'm a dancer, and a fun fact about me is I have 4 degrees, all attained in less than 5 years, more than about 5 years.
Okay, I'm going to need to figure out how you did that. But Marc, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and just do a quick intro?
Yeah, hey everybody. Honestly, super appreciative to be here. My name is Marc Lafleur. I'm the co-founder and CEO of truLOCAL. And we've been around for about 4 years now. And when we started off, year one, we were really just looking for a better way to get people connected to value-added meat products. So things like, 100% grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken, things like that. But over the past couple of years, we've actually moved our focus a little bit. We're really focused now on investing in Canada's regional supply chains. And I think that, as everyone knows, with what's been going on with COVID, it's very apparent that national supply chains are a little more fragile than people thought. So that's been our focus for the past little while. 4th year startup founder, so I don't have anything super exciting as a pastime, seeing as all the time goes back into truLOCAL, but really excited to be here.
And Djoume.
Hi, everyone. Very pleased and honored to be here. What an impressive panel. I'm a director of engineering at Shopify. Shopify is a commerce platform that enables anyone to start or grow a business. So equality of opportunity is core to our mission. I lead a team of about 100 engineers working on the logistics side of things. And before Shopify, I worked at company like FreshBooks, Points, and the Trapeze in Toronto, and I used to be a teacher back in France, teaching electrical engineering.
I was just going to ask where your accent was from. So the tagline for this event is Beyond Branding. That's not to discount the importance or relevance of actually creating a strong message or brand, but I wanted to kind of start there, and we'll just kind of have you jump in as you see fit. But from your perspectives, what's the value and the risk of making declarative statements in support of a civil rights movement like Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I guess I'll hop in there. Being a founder, I think that there's a lot of pressure nowadays for people to play on the safe side. I think right off the bat, if you're looking at making declarative statements over human rights issues as a value, I think you're kind of looking at it the wrong way right off the bat. I think most founders are probably looking to mitigate their risk. And I think that makes a lot of sense when it comes to small issues. But when things no longer become branding or a business issue, they become human rights issues. It's no longer something to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't say something because we might offend some people, right? If you've got a platform and a business that has access to millions of people, whether it be customers or social media, when you get something as serious as what's going on, it's your responsibility to use that platform. So that's, something that we've noticed in the past little while. And for us, obviously, a Black founder, we have Black employees, we have Black customers, we deal with the Black community all the time. it wasn't really so much about looking at value or anything like that. It wasn't even so much looking about the risk. It kind of just came down to the point that, we've got a platform here. And if any other Black founders or entrepreneurs can relate to this, that's, us doing our best to do our part.
I won't start with the risk associated with that, but I always like to look at things from a positive aspect, because with every risk, it also shows great opportunity. So the first thing is, with putting declarative statements, are like in tech, we always say, are you like the fast innovator? Were you one of the first people to put out a statement, or were you one of the, oh my Lord, my competitors are saying something, I need to say something? Because again, like we've seen and earlier speakers have touched on, if you're one of the fast followers or the laggers, then there's a question of internally versus externally. What do people think about your brand? Are your Black professionals within your organization looking at your statements and rolling their eyes because of hypocrisy? Because then that's that risk. Like we saw with Pinterest got dragged. There's a lot of companies that have now been dragged because they just put out a statement without getting internal buy-in. And that's very important. Well, the great thing about it, like I said, with risks, it's also opportunities, because now you've exposed to light something you can work on transparently to say, okay, great, we messed up. This is what we're going to do going forward. And it kind of puts you in that tough spot where you have to take action. It's no longer just nice to have. So I'll say there's risks involved if you've not done internal audits for sure as to where you truly are, and you were just following it from a branding perspective. But also there's opportunity there to actually expose whatever you need to work on to light and actually start taking action today.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Like that makes a lot of sense. What I would say is there's also risk in not, making a statement, because your science speaks volume as well, especially for your employee, your customers. So that's not necessarily the safe route, especially today with the strength of the movement that we have.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would add to that is that the consumers are becoming more and more savvy and more informed, like every minute. So I think the Pinterest example, and there's a litany of companies that came out and didn't think before they speak, or didn't consult like anyone before they put out a statement or made a commitment, and their customer base is like too smart for that at this stage. I think that's really, really coming to fruition, like the effects of the information age and consumer just having access to information. I mean, they can just pull up information about the company. So yeah, I totally agree with all of those sentiments, and I would love to know what you believe companies can do from your experience or from what you're seeing outside of your companies to create long-term sustainable changes where racial equity and representation are concerned.
I like to just say, first of all, and okay, I'm apologizing in advance because I'm very honest. So if it's too much, I'm sorry. Stop with all the training. So because I work for BPTN, a lot of companies all of a sudden want to do unconscious bias training. Being a Black professional who spent almost a decade in tech, every time before now I heard about unconscious bias training, I was rolling my eyes because it didn't even cover anything about my experience. But all of a sudden, we all want to go to school. So I saw this quote some weeks ago that said, white Black folks are getting murdered in the street, white folks are joining book clubs and reading. I know you might sound a little too harsh, but what I'm saying is we're tech, we move really fast. We actually need to iterate, do something small and iterate. We can start with a leading session on what it takes today to understand the Black tech experience and what allyship and real standing in the gap means. And then let's get with it. Let's do one thing and try and test. Let's do another thing and try and test. Because sitting in training all of this time is not actually putting into any actions. One. Another thing is, there's the saying of, oh my God, tech is not diverse. That's not true. We definitely have thousands of Black tech professionals like yourself, Janey and Marc, in the industry. The truth is Black folks don't typically show up in spaces that are supposed to be tech, because a lot of times we've had to hold our breath at work and stay at an event or a conference. I'm still having to hold my breath there too. I just want to distress and actually network with people. So Black folks have created their own spaces. So what we say to companies is show up where your diverse talent hangs out. So for instance, we have our summit, Be Future, which is the largest gathering of Black folks globally. It's going to be 10,000 plus. What is your company doing? Are you sponsoring? Are you showing up? Are you talking? Are you educating in a space like that? Or are you just continuing to focus on the traditional pipelines and where you usually recruit from? Because that actually matters. And then when you actually put statements out, let's see what your board representation looks like. Let's talk about senior leadership representation. And Hadia and all the speakers before me have actually talked about data. I know people say in Canada, we don't collect data on Black folks. We can do that internally. if you really want to make change, see what your representation looks like, because what gets measured gets done. And if you don't measure impact of how many people are in decision-making roles, what attrition rates look like for diverse versus other performance reviews, you're not going to know what you're even doing. It'll literally be like working in a dark room. And so it's, yes, measure things, show up where Black folks are hanging out. And I forget the third point, but I'm sure you remember.
And hey, look, to build up on that too, you know, one of the biggest things, you know, I like to come here and talk and represent from, you know, the small startup standpoint, you know, from 1 to 50 employees. If you're a Black founder or you're any founder looking to just get started, you know, what actions can you take today, right, to make difference in the organization? And, you know, speaking from experience, you know, when I'm starting to hear terms like, you know, analyze the data and are you doing non-biased training, you know, speaking to the points that were brought up earlier, it's like, oh my God, like I didn't even know we had to worry about this. And, you know, I'm a Black founder myself, right? So I think inherently we've luckily had a culture that fosters inclusivity, but I wanted to speak to it from the position of a small business and not really knowing where to start. And to be honest, you know, you just got to start somewhere. It's okay not to have all the answers. All right. If you're Fortune 500, you better have all the answers. But if you're just starting off, you know, whether you're a month or a few years into it, you don't know where to go. I personally believe that communication is everything. And it's not to kind of downplay the impact that real data and real, you know, real change can have within a business, but it's just to kind of help so that you can take baby steps. And for us, you know, you look at businesses that talk about fostering radical honesty. And for me, if you can foster communication, then you can foster radical honesty. If you foster radical honesty, then you can foster a community of inclusion, because if things are going wrong, you might not see it. You know, if you're a CEO, if you're a founder, if you're a CTO, if you're a manager, you're focused on other things and you might not be able to see what's going on. You might have a minority on your team that is experiencing all of these things and you're living in privilege and you're like, things are all fine. Well, if you have a community or a culture that is fostering that sort of communication, then you can help get that information to you. And one of the biggest problems in big tech is that they talk about it all the time. All these scandals are based on the fact that you've got employees telling managers about what's going on, and the managers are telling it to their boss and then their boss, and it never goes anywhere outside of that conversation. So, you know, you know, Antonia, to your point, you were talking about how, you know, Black people shouldn't be experiencing microaggressions, right? Well, the reason that I feel personally some of this stuff is happening is because nobody knows about it happening, right? And I feel like if you can foster more of this communication around it, then it makes a huge difference. And to me, it's all about giving your team a platform. If not only are you offering or fostering a culture of communication, that's fine, but it's not enough. You have to give a public platform. And that's something that, once again, speaking from experience, someone who I feel like should know better in this sort of space was still kind of like, wow, this hit really hard. What do we got to do? And for us, it was really just giving a platform. So we, you know, as just an example, we do our open mics during our all teams meetings, and anybody can come up and speak on any topic they want. And I think that by fostering that sort of communication and culture, that's what led to us actually coming out with an initiative around what's been going on. So, you know, I can't speak to it enough. If you can foster communication. And another point, you know, looking at what Jessica was saying, opening this conversation, how many people were impacted by her saying, look, this is a sensitive topic. Everyone needs to feel comfortable here. And we want to foster this communication. You know, how many managers say that to their team before meetings? And how much of a difference would it make if they did say that?
Yeah, all great stuff. I can easily relate with what you're saying, Jenny, about the frustration of like the additional training. And so I've had that feeling, especially with like the recent event around anti-Black racism. But then I reflected on the sexism and how I actually needed to go through some training myself, even though this is an issue that has been like very visible to me objectively for many, many years. So I wouldn't discount the training. I think you're like, do something. That's the important thing. And if it's only anti-bias training, that's as a first step, then do that, you know, and then do the next steps. So if all you can think of is do anti-bias training, I recommend you do that. It was what led me to a journey of understanding better the problem. And then like try, like it's like I think there's a lot of, so we talk about gathering data. It gets complicated very quickly. So it's very easy, I think, to get into like analysis paralysis with this. And then what are the dimensions we capture? How do we get all these data? And you wait for all the data. You can wait years, you know, before taking any action. So do gather the data, because to your point, what gets measured, improve. And at the same time, try things. So to give you some example of things that we've been trying at Shopify. So we have this dev degree program that target like underrepresented groups. We hire folks out of high school and get them on site, not anymore, remote. Like they work part-time at Shopify, and part-time they get a degree, and within 3 years they get a degree, and they also get 3 years of experience. And this is a very like diverse group by the nature of where we find those people. We have a similar program called Welcome Back, which is a returnship for people who have left the industry for any reason for many years, that found it hard to come back. Maybe they left because they were taking care of someone, or maybe because they suffer from the lack of diversity and representation in the tech industry. So this is an opportunity that we give. But also, another thing that I found frustrating is those conversations very quickly turn into recruiting. This is not a recruiting problem, or maybe at most it's a 50% recruiting problem. So there's another 50%, which is the retention, which is the inclusion, which is the belonging. So, and there's a lot that can be done here as well. And it's not rocket science. Like an example of something that we do, we have a mentorship program where we pair folks. Like it's not specifically diversity and inclusion program, but I've noticed that the people who benefit the most, or a lot of people who speak about the benefit they get from this, are underrepresented groups as well. I'm not saying any of those is a silver bullet. All I'm saying is doesn't take much. Just try something, see what happens, and then iterate.
Gotcha. So can I just clarify, Marlon? I wasn't saying not to do training. I just know. So what happens is a bunch of companies call us up and they don't want to do anything other than weeks of training. Right? And I'm saying that is not effective if you're just learning and not actioning. And so that was my one point. So we actually have an offering, and we actually think about diversity, inclusion, and belonging for Black communities in three big buckets. So there's the talent acquisition point. To your point, it's a huge percentage of that. We also talk about your talent brand. When people think about your company as a diverse candidate, what do they associate it with? Because I might think about Shopify as a great commerce company, and of course, Shopify is a partner of BPTN. So, but also when I think about Shopify, what do they represent the Black community in any way or fashion or form? Because that creates Black brand affinity as an employer of choice. And then the third bit, which is very important, is the culture and retention piece. Because we always start with understanding the Black tech experience. Why? Because a lot of companies leave the job of diversity, inclusion, and belonging to folks in talent acquisition, to your point, Julie, and the C-suite or people in the people function. But we'll also say that it's the job of people leaders and hiring managers to actually learn how to build a diverse team. Because if not, we bring all that melanin into your organization and it just churns out. And the attention is high because you don't know how to actually talk to people from another culture without being awkward, or how to handle cringy moments. So there is that piece. So we tell people not to rely on their Black folks for education or people within the people function of the business. Another point people forget to make or to associate is intersectionality is real. I've had companies who have said to me, oh, we want to focus on women in tech right now, and then we'll focus on people in the LGBTQIA+ community, and we'll do Black folks around Black History Month. And people forget, I'm a woman in tech. Like, and there are people in our network who actually represent people from the LGBTQIA+ communities. Like, why can't we actually start with one of the communities who has been historically been the most underrepresented? Because we found that a rising tide raises all boats. And you don't have to segment underrepresented groups like that because it actually makes a myopic vision.
Yeah, thank you for that addition. And I share your fear of people stopping or leaders stopping at education. Yeah. I agree with Jimmy too that there's a bit of a continuum, and educating is probably the first. Like really caring is probably the first step, and then educating yourself, and then figuring out from there. Now that I have information, what am I actually going to do? Like it really is just the seed of the solution. I think we have time for one more question. I'll try and keep responses to, let's call it under a minute. But I mean, we've already kind of dipped into this, but what do you believe there's the role or the responsibility of the manager or the leader is in creating that fair and safe workplace? And another way to think about that question is, what isn't the role? What is the community or the employee base or the culture or society at large responsible for versus the managers or leaders in your company?
I can get started there. So I think we can just think of like, what is the role of a manager in general? So a manager is responsible for promoting people. He's responsible for hiring people. He's responsible for assessing performance. So like all of those things needs to be done with an awareness of biases, because we all have biases and we can't turn them off. You know, I have a biases against Black people. I found out surprisingly. How could I not have? You know, this is part of the system. So what are you doing to counteract your biases? And again, like the data is a great way to do that. So don't just look at subjective data point. Look at objective data point as well, and use that to balance out. We have also like benchmark. You know, like look at the data. What is the percentage of women that is being promoted, or what is the likelihood of a woman being promoted versus the likelihood of a man being promoted? Is there a difference there? Like this is not hard to gather data. We also do calibration. So knowing I have those biases, I can lean on others, you know, that have a different experience, that have a different perspective to help me counteract those biases when I make any of those decisions.
Yeah, you know, anytime someone talks to me about management, you know, just from experience, I've always got to loop back to what I was saying earlier about communication. You know, I really feel that this isn't a tech problem necessarily, right? This is a human problem. And what's the role of a manager? And, you know, they talk about study after study where managers that care about their employees and managers that take interest in their employees or their team members do significantly better. Well, once again, you know, if this is a human problem, building those relationships, trying to understand, trying to foster that sort of collaborative nature to me is most important. When you look at the businesses that have the highest instances of issues when it comes to not being diverse, you start seeing siloed communities and siloed management. So for me, I just think that once again, following that fostering of communication, and for us, once again, speaking from experience, that's what led to the impact initiatives that we did all around what was going on right now. So I've always got to advocate for communication. I feel it's a manager's job to foster that communication. And if you've got a communication issue in a team, I would always start by looking at the manager.
Awesome. Janey, you get the last word.
So I would say that something to mull over is people do not leave bad organizations. People leave bad bosses. So let's think about that for a little bit, because I understand that a manager's job is hard. Like, Julie, you have to manage a group of 100+ engineers. So having to check in on the people side might actually seem like an extra layer of work. But honestly, sometimes just putting in something in your calendar, and I'm trying to give something tactical that we can do today, leaving a time on Friday to say, I'm going to do check-ins. Or once you do your check-ins with individuals on your team, having a section of that actually goes to just say, how are you doing today? Because sometimes we have something, our bias that's framed called, I learned this from a Nigerian author, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, that talks about the power of a single story. Because I had a single story of when I moved to Canada. I always start to my story to say, I have only been 5 years Black, honestly. Before now, people are like, what does that even mean? I've only been Nigerian. So as majority of Canadians are learning about Black history in Canada, I've been learning that too, because people see me on the street and call me Black. And I all of a sudden felt like I needed to learn so much about what being Black means. So the truth is, a Black Canadian will have a very different experience from me. And because people sometimes forget and lump everyone in big groups like that, we don't actually narrow down to the individuals that make up our teams. So what am I saying? When you do check-ins, remember you're talking to the individual, not just the Black person in your team, because their stories are different, right? And as an individual, as a manager, you have to take on the job of diversifying your own pipeline, right? And because at the end of the day, if you think about how tech recruits today, yes, sometimes to send out information to talent acquisition, please find me a position for this, right? But a lot of times we look in our own network. So a quick analysis you can do is look at your LinkedIn connections, the past 10 or 20. What does it look like? Does it look like you? I have found that I've also been guilty of that. Once I joined BPTN, all my connections just happened to the Black people for the next 2 months. I was like, okay, this is not good. I got to diversify my network. So diversify your network, lean into the community. Someone mentioned in the chat that BPTN has a great mentorship opportunity. Seek out people you can stand in the gap for within your teams, internally and externally. Because you have a voice, not saying anything, Marlon, is not good. A lot of times, sometimes people managers, hiring managers are like, yeah, I don't know if I have the power. This is a C-suite thing or somebody above me. And then, like you said, it gets lost in the pipeline. But you have some ownership. You have a voice. Because at the end of the day, people leave bad bosses, not bad organizations.
Thank you all so much for joining us. And we're a bit over time, but if anybody has like a 10-second announcement or plug or anything that they need to share before they leave, feel free to do so. Otherwise, again, thank you.
I've got 2 seconds real quick. I just want to kind of, I guess, bring it all together on the communication thing. You know, for us, it really became something where 2 of our team members brought up, once again, what was going on and how much it impacted them. And within 4 to 5 days, you know, our initiative was set where we decided to put $10,000 towards 2 $5,000 business grants specifically for Black founders or Black entrepreneurs. You know, within that 5-day period, we were able to grab 31 different resources on educating on what's been going on with Black Lives Matter, you know, the Black community and just the history of it. So we actually have a link that has 31 different resources, books, TV shows, everything, just to educate people. So if anyone's interested in that, I'd be more than happy to drop that in there. But once again, had we not had a culture of communication, and once again, it's not that hard to get that, you know, you can do it when you're 1 to 2 to 5 to 10 people. So I just wanted to kind of bring all that together.
Amazing. My close is I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Lovely to chat with you, Marc, Janey, and Marlon. I hope to see you all at Be Future this year. It's going to be October. It's going to be perfect with a lot of talent from across the globe, and we can all learn and more inclusive practices in tech. See you soon.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you all.